Alright, UFC 308 is finally here. The best card of the year. Ilya Tuporia versus Max Holloway and Robert Kwiatka versus Hamzat Chimaev. I'll be breaking down every single fight on the card and picking whoever I think is going to win. In the first fight of the night, we got Ismail Naurdiev versus Bruno Silva. We haven't seen Naurdiev in the UFC since 2020. He was at Brave CF, went 2-3 in the organization and got stopped 3 times. Bruno Silva, even though he has been in UFC the whole time, he has been losing. He's coming out of 3 losses in a row and 5 losses in his last 6 fights. He hasn't been knocked out, but he has taken a lot of damage. But I do think Bruno Silva will be able to come away with a win by just being the most experienced fighter. And you also don't know how Ismail is going to feel. You know, he's coming back to the UFC. Maybe he's going to be nervous. Maybe he's going to try to make a point. I just think Bruno Silva will be able to come away with a win, probably by decision on this one. Next up, we got Aslan versus Rafael Cerqueira. We don't know much about Rafael. We know he's 11-0 against alright competition. He was supposed to fight in the Contender Series, but 3 opponents pulled out on him. Pause. We've seen Aslan in the Contender Series. We've seen him make his UFC debut. We know that he carries some power. He won both fights by knockout. And I just think that usually when there's these undefeated fighters coming to the UFC, they have a lot of hype around them and we know about them. We don't know anything about Rafael, so I just think he's probably not that good. So I do have Ibu winning by maybe knockout, maybe late in the fight. The next fight is Rinat Fakhretdinov against Ruziboev. Rinat had a lot of hype around him when he first came to the UFC. Since then, the hype kind of died down. His last 2 performances weren't that good. Ruziboev 34-9. He is the more experienced guy but has less fights in the UFC. He'll have a 5-inch height advantage, but he got beat up badly in his last fight against Buckley. I just think Rinat will have the striking advantage. I think he'll start piecing him up early, and I don't think Ruziboev will be able to take him down. So Rinat will probably finish him maybe late in the second round or the start of the third round. So on this one, I'll go Rinat third round TKO. Next up, we got Farid Basharat against Victor Hugo. There's a lot of hype around the Basharat brothers. Farid is still undefeated, 12-0, 3 fights in UFC, only 1 finish, but he did win every fight pretty convincingly. Victor just got to the UFC. He won in the Contender Series by submission and his UFC debut by unanimous decision. I just don't think Farid is that good. He's not good at all on the feet. He has no power, but he's really, really, really good on the ground. So if Victor can keep the fight standing, I think he'll maybe be able to come away with the victor. And I do think that fraud check is coming soon for Farid. But not in this fight. I think Farid will be able to take him down. And probably, I don't think he submits him. I think Victor has pretty decent grappling. But I think Farid takes him down and keeps him there and probably wins a boring decision. But I do think that fraud check is coming very soon for Farid, like he did for his brother. So on this one, I'll go Farid Basharat by unanimous decision. The next one is Kennedy against Justin Tafa. Tafa stepping in on short notice, and something happened to the Tafa brothers. They used to have a lot of hype around them, and somehow the hype just disappeared. I'm not sure why. Tafa will definitely have the power advantage on this one, but I think that's about it. Kennedy used to fight a light heavyweight, so he'll have the skill advantage, he'll have the speed advantage, but we do have to remind ourselves that this man is extremely chinny. It seems like anything can put this man out. So against a guy like Tafa that has a lot of power, you wonder how this one is going to play out. I do think that Kennedy will be able to beat him. I think that the speed advantage and the skill advantage will be enough to beat Tafa, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kennedy is beating this man up the whole fight and out of nowhere Tafa lands a punch and puts this man out cold. But I will go with Kennedy. Maybe he takes him down and is able to find a submission. So I'm going with Kennedy by submission on this one. Then we have Abus Magomedov against Bruno Ferreira. Abus had a lot of hype around him, but then he lost to Strickland and he also lost to Caio Borralho. And I think the UFC is kind of trying to revive the hype that they had around him, but Bruno Ferreira is definitely not the right man to put in front of him if you're trying to do that. Bruno is extremely dangerous on the feet, he has a lot of power, And I do know that Abus is also dangerous, but this man gasses out very quickly. He has one of the worst gas tanks that I've ever seen in the UFC. In the first round, he is extremely dangerous, and you have to be very careful against him. But if this fight gets past the first round, Bruno is going to knock him out quite easily. So I do have Bruno winning him by probably second round knockout, maybe third. But I do think that Bruno will knock him out. The next fight is Nurmagomedov against Daniel Santos. Nurmagomedov is 18-3. He lost an extremely close fight to Jonathan Martinez. A lot of people still think he should have won that fight, and in my opinion, he's just better, more experienced, and Daniel just got to the UFC. I think he still has a lot to learn, and I think in this fight, Side will be able to come up with a pretty easy decision win. Maybe Daniel will prove me wrong, but I do think that Said Nurmagomedov will win this fight pretty much however he wants, but I think he'll win a decision on this one. Then we have Mateusz Rębecki against Orolbai. I think this one will be an extremely close fight. Mateusz Rębecki ended up losing his last fight. He got beat up by Diego Ferreira. Diego Ferreira is an extremely tough veteran, but I think most people were expecting Rębecki to come out of the win. Orolbai 13-1, undefeated in the UFC, good striking, and in my opinion, one of the best grapplers in the UFC. I think it will be a very close fight, but Orolbai is on an 8-fight win streak. He has all the confidence in the world, and Mateusz got finished by Diego Ferreira. I think Orolbai has all of the momentum and all of the hype around him. So I do think he'll be able to win this fight. How? I'm not sure. I don't think he'll be able to finish him, but I think he'll win. Not a dominant one, but a pretty clear decision against Mateusz Rębecki. The next one is Geoff Neal against RDA. I don't know what's the purpose of this fight. I don't know why it's happening. Both of these guys lost their last 2 fights. It won't make any difference in the division. RDA keeps moving up and down from lightweight to welterweight. I don't know how he's still ranked, but I am picking him to win this fight for the simple and sole reason that I want him to win. It's that simple. RDA, even though he's old, is still entertaining, and every time Geoff Neal wins, he does by holding his opponent against the fence, not shooting any takedowns, not punching his opponent, just doing enough for the ref to not separate them. So I am picking RDA because I want him to win. I do know that it won't probably happen. Geoff Neal will probably win a pretty easy decision, but I am picking RDA. I will be rooting for him, and I hope he comes away with a win. If he does so, it will probably be by decision. The first fight of the main card will be Shara Magomedov against Arman. I do think Arman will be a good step up for Magomedov. He's still undefeated. We know he's an amazing striker, but he doesn't carry that much power, even though he can land a lot. He hasn't exceeded our expectations yet, but I do think he will do so in this fight. I think he'll land a lot, and I think he'll end up stopping Arman late in this fight, probably by a late 3rd round TKO. If that doesn't happen, he'll probably win a fairly dominant decision. But I think Arman is a pretty good step up for him, and I think he'll show why he has so much hype around him. The next one is Magomed Ankalaev against Alexander Rakic. Listen, Ankalaev is not as boring as everyone says he is. I think people have fallen to this narrative that Alex Pereira put out there, that Ankalaev is a boring fighter. I don't think he is a boring fighter. He has 6 knockouts and 10 wins in the UFC, and he is definitely the 2nd best lightweight in the UFC. Now, I think Magomed Ankalaev will make a statement in this fight, and I think he'll finish Rakic early. It's either that or it's going to be an extremely slow fight where both fighters are kind of just striking at defense and they're both scared to come in and getting caught with a big shot. Rakic lost his last 2 fights. He got stopped by Iri. Even though he's kind of looking good against Iri, you know how Iri is. He fights with his hands down. He doesn't have that good of a defense. But I think Ankalaev will make a statement in this fight, and I think he will stop Rakic early, either by 1st round knockout or by early 2nd round knockout. and then you'll be definitely next in line for a title shot. Next up is Lerone Murphy against Dan Ige. A lot of people talk about Lerone Murphy like he's this up-and-coming prospect in the featherweight division. This man is 33 years old. He just beat Edson Barboza in his last fight, and if he really wants to get to a title shot in the UFC, he will have to beat Dan Ige pretty convincingly. And I just don't think that's going to happen. Dan Ige is extremely tough. He's extremely durable. He's never been stopped. He stepped in to fight Diego Lopez on like 3 hours notice. But Lerone is still the younger guy. He is undefeated. He has a lot of confidence. And for that reason, I'll pick Lerone Murphy by decision. I think he'll mix the striking and the grappling up. And I think he will be able to win a close decision against Dan Ige. Next up in the co-main event, Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. Whittaker has been active since losing to DDP. He beat Paulo Costa by decision and knocked out Ikram. He's one of the most skilled middleweights of all time. He'll definitely have the advantage on the feet against Chimaev, and he does also have really good takedown defense. Chimaev, he is undefeated, but he also hasn't fought in a year. He won a very controversial decision against Usman. I think it should have been a draw, and he keeps getting sick and is forced to pull out of fights. He gassed out against Usman, and he never had a 5-round fight in his entire career. This is an extremely tough fight to pick. I am leaning towards Whittaker, but then I remember that Khamzat has changed a lot of stuff in his camp. He's not killing himself in the gym every day. He's been smarter with his training. There's a lot of doubts in my mind when it comes to this fight. I want Whittaker to win, but something tells me that Chimaev will get it done. There's only two ways that I see this fight playing out in my mind. Either Whittaker survives the first round after Chimaev takes him down and starts pissing him up. Chimaev gasses out and Whittaker finishes him in the championship rounds, or Khamzat takes Whittaker down in the first round, starts applying the ground and pound, and eventually finds a submission. There's no doubt in my mind that Chimaev will be able to take him down in the first. He just will. He'll come out fast, he'll take him down, and he'll try to beat him up on the ground. But we do have to remember that he wasn't able to hurt Usman on the ground like he was doing to the other guys when he was coming up in the rankings. The other guys just got taken down, got beat up, and waited for the ref to stop the fight, or got submitted. He wasn't able to hurt Usman on the ground, and then he gassed out. So there's a possibility that the same will happen against Whittaker. So I am picking Whittaker by a 4th round TKO. But if Chimaev doesn't gas out, there's a really good thing about Chimaev besides his grappling and his wrestling. That is his relentless pressure. The man never stops coming forward, and he does have the power to knock anybody out. So he can put Whittaker out. I just don't see that happen. I think that if Khamzat wins this fight, it will be by either ground and pound or a submission. But my final pick will be Khamzat takes Whittaker down early in the fight, gasses out after the first round, Whittaker starts pissing him up, and Whittaker finishes the fight in the 4th round by knocking him out. That's my final prediction. And then the main event of the evening, Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. First of all, I have to say that Max has been completely disrespected in the build-up to this fight. It feels exactly the same how the Gaethje Holloway fight build-up felt. Everybody's saying, oh, his power is too much, Max won't be able to take it, and then we all saw what happened. Max got in there and pissed him up for 5 rounds and then knocked him out in the final second of the fight. Now, Gaethje is not Ilia Topuria. Gaethje is pretty much just walking CTE at this point. Ilia Topuria is extremely good everywhere. He has an extremely tight guard, he's extremely powerful, and he can put anyone out, even Max Holloway. Even Max Holloway, the best chin in UFC history, Ilia Topuria can put him out if he lands the right shot. I don't think he will land that shot. This is how I see this fight happening. I think this will be Toporia's toughest test of his career. A lot of people think that Volk wasn't as good as he was in the past when he fought Ilya. Volk was extremely good in that fight. Yes, he shouldn't have been fighting because he had just been knocked out 3 or 4 months prior to that fight, and his brain hadn't recovered. But Volk was still extremely fast. He was still extremely good, and he did win the first round versus Superior. Now, this is how I see this fight playing out. I think Ilya will probably win a 48-47. I don't see Ilya putting Max out. We know that Max kind of struggles against shorter fighters. In my opinion, Ilya should try to mix the striking with the grappling because he is the better grappler. But Max Holloway has incredible takedown defense, and even when he gets taken down, he pops right back up. We've seen that happen before. So I see Ilya probably winning the first few rounds, maybe round 1, 2, and then Max maybe coming back, winning 3 and 4, and then Ilya catching a second win and winning the last round. I don't think Ilya puts Max out. I really don't. I think it will be mostly a boxing match. And for that reason, I think this has the potential to be one of the best fights in UFC history. Ilya said that he will point to the middle of the octagon in the first 10 seconds, and I do think that can happen. I hope Max doesn't take that opportunity because that probably end badly. We know that Ilya is probably more dangerous in the first half of the fight. So if I'm Max Holloway, I'll try to survive the first 3 rounds. I wouldn't fight scared. Max can't fight scared. He can't fight trying to not get knocked out. He still has to try to win those rounds. But I would fight more cautious in the first few rounds and then turn it up in the last few. Max Holloway can beat Ilya Topuria. Will he? I don't think so, but he definitely can. And a lot of people are discrediting Max. Max has been in the UFC for almost 13 years. Ilya Topuria will definitely win the press conference, but I don't think Max will let Ilya get in his head. He's been the champion. He's been in the UFC for a long time. He's more experienced. He has had a lot of press conference. He won't let Ilya get in his head. So that's how I see the fight happening. And if the rest of the card plays out like it looks on paper, this has the potential to be one of, if not the best UFC card of all time. So yeah, UFC 308, Ilya Topuria versus Max Holloway. We all looking for it, and we'll see what happens.